Hey guys, hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Battlefit Live. Today we have with us someone rather special. We have Mr. Jitendra Khare, who is India's top MMA coach. He is the head coach of the topmost mixed martial arts team in India, which is Team Relentless. He is the co-founder and coach at Evolution Fitness Academy. He is also the technical advisor to X1 International Fight Promotions and is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. Is that correct, sir?
Thank you for the introduction, Pushkar. Yeah, that was correct.
So, sir, there are a bunch of questions that our followers had asked, and I would like to ask them to you and get them cleared out of the way. Before I ask you the few questions that I have intended to ask you, and I hope that's okay. So, one of the first questions from one of our followers was that if someone has had a shoulder injury, can they pursue mixed martial arts?
So, just to give you a background, I have my right shoulder has been dislocated and I have a subluxated left shoulder. So, yeah, I don't see why not. A good rehab program, a good physiotherapist, and a good strength and conditioning program can get you well back on the track. So, yeah, 100% you can. I mean, I've always said this, and with my age, I mean, when you're 41, heading to 42, it becomes more important to listen to your body. So there will be good days and bad days, and you have to be sensible about it. Like, I would love to go hard like most of the 20-year-olds in my training room every day, but my body might not support it. And what you need to understand is, a minor injury could set you off for months. And in my case, it could be as long as a year. So, you just have to listen to your body. You have to operate in the range of motion, which is pain-free. At times, there are things that you cannot do. So, you have to be very, very true to yourself more than anybody else. And I think, having a good physiotherapist is a very, very important thing. So I've always said this and believe this, that, though MMA is an individual sport, it takes a whole goddamn village to get you there. So right from having a good nutritionist to a good physiotherapist to a good doctor, all this team is what keeps you going.
Absolutely. So, there's another question that a follower asked, and this is something that even I wanted to ask because this has been quite a ruckus in the recent days. That is, what is the qualification to be a good MMA coach? You see a lot of fakes going around today claiming to teach MMA or self-defense, and we all know, like at least the people who know martial arts genuinely know that these are quacks, but the general public doesn't. So according to you, what are the qualifications that would make a good MMA coach? How does one pick out a genuine MMA coach from the trash?
So I think it's a very, it's like asking, sir, it's like saying that what's a qualification for a strength and training coach? Do you have to be a graduate? Do you have to be a medical guy? Do you have to be an engineer? So, I mean, there is no right answer. What I believe is that to be a MMA coach, one is, it's not something which you have done and dusted and now, you're going to wear a coach jacket and sit on the sidelines and be an MMA coach. You have to be on the mat. You have to be constantly upgrading yourself. You have to be competing yourself, because the sport is such where I can teach you 10 techniques and they might look very nice on the pad when I'm hitting it, or my takedowns will look lovely when I'm showing it against somebody who's cooperating with me. But when I actually step on the mat and compete with somebody or spar with somebody is when the practicality comes in, whether those combinations, whether those submissions, whether those takedowns have any practicality to it. So I mean, I wish I had an answer in one word saying, oh, you have to be a 10 pass and then you have to have this degree. I mean, let's be honest. I have done my diploma in aircraft maintenance engineering. I did my BA in psychology, and here I am doing what I'm doing. So I'm sure there are many people out there who believe I'm not the right person to do what I do. But so I think one of the best ways to know a good coach is step on the mat, test him out, test out what he teaches you. And I also believe, like I've said all the time, it's not just about the coach, it's also about the environment that the coach creates in the gym. What is the kind of environment are we looking at? Is it a cult where, okay, just because I have said it, you have to follow it? Or is it an open discussion? Because at the end of the day, it's a technique.
That is a major factor.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a technique. It's nothing I said so. I mean, today I can show you a technique and tomorrow there'll be 10 YouTube videos with counters for it. So I need to also, as a coach, understand that what are the counters, what can I do to stop the counters. So it's a constant learning procedure, so that's why I am of that belief that as long as I am an active competitor, as long as I have an active practitioner, I'm a good coach. The day I stop competing or the day I stop actually, practicing, I would slip down to not being a good coach myself.
So, there are people who come from a background of karate or a background of judo or a background of wrestling, like a classical martial art background, and then they transition to MMA. So, what are the skills that you need in order to be a proper mixed martial artist? Like, what is the combination you would put together of grappling, striking, ground, and how would you place it?
So it's always, the case always is that, you'll always come from a particular martial arts background. I mean, now we are seeing guys that are, more wholesome MMA fighters. Initially, you would have guys that are boxers, you would have guys that are judo players or guys that are mud pit wrestlers. I have had opportunity to train with a lot of judo guys. So I think, it's about, I don't say that it's about filling gaps. Obviously, if I come from a grappling background, that's my forte. I'm going to always make sure that my strength gets stronger and my weaknesses kept getting lower. So, I mean, I might not spend hours training striking, but I would need to strike enough so that I can make my grappling effective. And the other way around, because I come from a boxing background, I mean, I need to still be able to grapple enough to keep that fight standing. I mean, I don't believe in the term anti-wrestling and anti-BJJ. I mean, anti-BJJ is BJJ. To learn to stop a wrestling technique or to learn to stop a BJJ technique, I have to practice wrestling and BJJ. That's the only way I'm going to do it. So I think, there has to be a balance in everything. Obviously, there'll be something that I go to always, especially when I get hit, and when I'm rocked. There is always my instincts. I'll always rely on my instincts. For some, that will be to shoot. For some, that will be to cover up and throw strikes. So different people, different techniques and different, backgrounds. And that's how it always works, I believe.
So I obviously know that you're a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-jitsu and you compete in amateur MMA. But what has been your practical background in martial arts? Like, what mainstream did you come from?
So I've done it all. So I started off in a boarding school where boxing was part of one of the sports that we did across the year. So I started off with a bit of boxing in school and I boxed till college level. At the same time, I was also doing kickboxing. When I would come home back to my hometown, which was in the district Raigad, I would go and do some mud pit wrestling. And, like I've been telling everyone, my initial years, though it sounds like, oh, I've been mud pit wrestling. My initial years experience of mud pit wrestling was getting my face rubbed in the mud by all the seniors. So yeah, but I was fortunate enough to start learning judo in 2008 under Mr. Ashok Chaudhary, in Challengers Judo Academy, and I had some great seniors who understood that I'm learning judo to improve my grappling for BJJ and MMA, and they taught me accordingly. They weren't of the belief that because I was always very clear that listen, I'm here, I might do judo tournaments. But that's not my main goal. I'm here to learn judo because in 2008, there were not many people doing BJJ in India. So, I when I did my research, I realized that judo is going to be the closest I'm going to get to learning gi grips, to learning throws, and some amount of nevaza.
So, when did Jiu-Jitsu exactly start for you?
So, Jiu-Jitsu started in about 2009 when I attended a seminar in Nasik by a brown belt from Italy who was visiting, and to be very honest, that was like my first experience of BJJ. And this guy was like about a 75-80 kg guy, and at that point we were in this akhada in Nasik where he actually did the seminar in a mud pit, a BJJ seminar in a mud pit wrestling area. And so you had all these huge wrestlers who after obviously wanted to prove a point to him, and and he was just so cool and he was submitting everyone, and I was like, man, I need to really learn this. And I tied up with certain people whom I started learning under, And yeah, so I started competing in BJJ. My first competition was in 2011 at the Bangkok Open, Gi and no gi. So yeah, 2008, 2009 is when I actually started training BJJ, but I was already training judo then for a year or two.
So, do you think there's a particular psyche that gets attracted to MMA? Like, is there a particular kind of individual that is gravitated towards the sport of mixed martial arts?
Yeah, somebody who's a little crazy up there, because I was just talking to somebody and they asked me the same question, that what do you think it takes. I think it takes a special kind of a person, because this is what I believe. I've been doing this for 10 years, and you know it really really needs a very different mindset to wake up every morning, and be excited about getting kicked in your face and people having put their ass on your face or punched in your face. But yeah, I mean, it really takes that kind of a person. And I believe this, that at least my team, and I have seen this, is that most of the guys that are fighting realize that there is not much money in this, not yet. I mean, I do believe that we will get there at some point. We are not there yet. There's not much glamour in this, and there's not much fame in this. But you need to be internally motivated to do this. External motivations like money and glamour and fame and position will not take you very far in this sport, because I mean, we train twice a day, 6 days a week, and once a day on Sunday. So when you're training 13 sessions a week, and then again 3 sessions and 4 sessions of strength and conditioning, plus holding pads for your clients, after a point, all external motivations fail you. And this is what I tell people, and I've seen that if you want to do this, the only reason you want to do this is because you want to be the best in the world. Any other reason is going to fall short very soon.
So do you think the same factor works against MMA being commercially viable for people?
So I don't think so, Pushkar, because I think it's about any sport, any profession. Let's be really honest. I mean, you take any profession, you read about the corporate, leaders such as Bill Gates and people like that. Show me one person who's not obsessed with what he's doing and has made it to the top.
I'm referring to the general public, all right? I absolutely understand that the athletes who want to be at the top of the game, they have to be absolutely 110% driven and in there. You need a level of madness to be an athlete or a top performer in anything. But I'm talking of the general populace, the general people, your 9 to 5 working general public. Do you think these people get warded off or scared by the whole perception that you need to be crazy to get into mixed martial arts? For that mixed martial arts is all about aggression and wackoness. Do you think that's counterproductive to the commercial growth of mixed martial arts in India?
Yeah, Pushkar, so to a large extent, yes, because unfortunately, the way our Indian culture is, people still perceive this, and, it's like, are ye mardhad hai. For them, it is like two people, just going at it with each other. I mean, I've heard things like, are ye isko chipka kyun hai? Ye is pe leta kyun hai? Things like that. I mean, it's only when people start practicing it or see the finer side of it, they understand that it's a science. It's not as simple as two people swinging on the street. And this is what I've always said. When people compare it to street fights, my point to them is always that, look, anybody who's had any sort of training can beat anyone on a street fight. You can hit anybody who's never fought back. But when it's two people where skill levels are matched, that's where the mindset comes in. That's where the intellect comes in. The fight IQ comes in. Which obviously it's very difficult for a layman to see. And whether we like it or not, people like to see, there are not many people, unless there are people from this background. Let's be really honest. I mean, if you are not somebody who's practiced BJJ or practiced wrestling, you would like to see two guys swinging and trying to take their head off, then two guys being technical on the ground, trying to submit each other, escaping positions, reversing positions. I mean, nobody really appreciates that. A layman wants to see two people trying to take each other's head off.
So, MMA as a lifestyle, do you think it's viable for the general public, for kids, office-going people, people who lead lives outside of MMA as a career option? Do you think it's something they can and should pursue as a lifestyle?
So I think as a lifestyle, yes, 100% it is viable because it is a disciplined lifestyle. And again, understand, I know I say this because I've been into a couple of more sports like powerlifting. I've been into, boxing a bit and stuff like that. And I think lifestyle of an athlete is very different. You're a 24 by 7 athlete, whether you're an MMA fighter, you're a football player, you're a cricketer, because it's not like a 9 to 7 job where, okay, I've done my job, tomorrow I've got a day off, I'll go and have a nice drink today, I might wake up with a hangover and rest off the other day. I need to understand that what I put into my body today or how much rest I take today is going to affect my performance tomorrow and the day after. If I'm going to do something stupid like staying up whole night and drinking today, and I step on the mat tomorrow, my team's going to beat the shit out of me tomorrow. I'm going to have a horrible day. So you have to be disciplined. You have to have, it's not that, we don't have our off time. But say, for example, you're in a fight camp, you're 8 weeks out of your fight. You have to be insane to go out and, party and do things like that. So as a lifestyle, I think I see it as a perfect lifestyle because you need to focus on what's important. You need to do away with everything that is unessential. Anything that does not help me be a better fighter tomorrow, I cannot do it today. Because whether it's about even as simple as staying hydrated, if I'm not going to stay hydrated today, I can do anything. I go on the mat tomorrow and my performance is going to suffer. So I think it's a perfect lifestyle. And I don't think age has anything to do with it. I think it's a mindset. It's a mindset, more than the age. And that's what I believe, and I could be wrong, but that's the kind of lifestyle I have lived so far.
So now there's a lot of research out there that goes against striking sports and sports that cause a lot of concussions for kids. All right. So how would you go around structuring an MMA training program for kids starting from age 5? Because fact, since I've been working with a bunch of Olympic athletes, I know that to get to an Olympic level in any sport, to get the absolute top athlete in any sport, you need to start very, very young. Like gymnasts start from age 4 and 5. So I think the same would go for MMA if you want to see MMA as an Olympic sport someday. So how would you structure a program to initiate kids into MMA while taking into account the fact that you do not want to cause too many concussions or too many injuries in the process of growing up into the sport? How would you structure their training regimen?
So, my son started training when he was 4 years old. He's 8 now. He's already done his first international BJJ competition and he's been training with us. So again, the question that you need to ask yourself here is that when you're training a kid, understand that there are two things that, a reaction a child could get. He could either love the training or completely hate it and then not want to do it. So the question that arises is that, do you really want to put him in sparring straight away? And just sparring is not the answer to being a better fighter. There are a lot many things that kids can do before they get into sparring. And for a kid, especially when they are 5 years, like we are running a BJJ program under Professor Carlos Almeida for kids, and we have kids from 4 years to 8 and 9 years. So there has to be an element of play, that techniques have to be taught to them in a manner where it is a play, but it has to be done over and over again so that it builds muscle memory for them. It becomes a part of their instinct, right? Sparring, obviously, even, I'm sure if you go to, our Team Relentless page, you'll see a lot of videos of these kids, doing their BJJ sparring and stuff like that. And I think there's a misconception that sparring concussions can only happen in striking. Even a good takedown can lead concussions. Even, if you're anything that jars your head. Come on. You've seen on cricket grounds 2 people banging and landing up with concussions. So would you stop playing cricket? Every sport has its pros and cons. And again, do you really want a 5-year-old child, to be working on bettering his skills, or his focus should be in participating in competitions? I'm happy for my son to do one competition in 6 months or a year, and then spend the rest of the time focusing on making his skills better, improving his skills. Yeah. So at least till the age of 9 or 10, I would keep their focus on building instincts. I would like to say building instincts, building muscle memory. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's all different. So when they go into a teenager mode, I mean, come on, we've seen kids getting into fights in schools and colleges. So it's not like only if they practice MMA or practice sparring, they're going to get concussions or get hit. So, I mean, and I think that by teaching them or by teaching them the right techniques and by, like I have a rule that if my kid gets into a fight or he picks up a fight, he's never going to, he's not going to be in the room training. So if I ever get a complaint saying that, oh, he started this fight, I'm going to stop his training. I mean, that fear is always there at the back of his mind so that he never picks up a fight. And I think kids that start learning early and start training martial arts early also start realizing that, that comes with a responsibility. So it...
Learn restraint.
Yeah. And I think that is also teaching them that early in the age, teaching them that. Because initially, obviously, they want to go home and try it with their siblings, try it with their, friends in their building and stuff like that. But teaching them that restraint and constantly reinforcing it to them. That listen, if we get a complaint, we're going to stop you from training. So if you enjoy this, you're going to do this only when you are here. When I'm in front of you as a coach and I'm allowing you to do it. I mean, obviously, they are not going to listen to you 100%. But over time and reinforcing that over and over again always helps.
So what's your take on the business of MMA in India? It's like we have seen over the time a lot of competitions and high level promotions come up and absolutely fizzle out. And the way you see them happening now is a lot of trash talking that isn't backed up by actual performance. And it's a mediocre scene, and the scene doesn't seem to be growing. It's stuck in that rut and it's not making great headway. So what do you think is going wrong with the business of the sport of MMA in India?
I don't think we are failing badly. I mean, understand what I believe is this, Pushkar, that trash talking is a character, right? I mean, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to get into somebody's face and your mama and your dada and all that shit. I don't do that, But there are people who do that. I mean, I know somebody who does that and gets into his opponent's head, Like, I know somebody, I obviously don't want to take his name because that's his game plan. I don't want to give that out.
Yeah.
But he's so good at it that I know that when people fight him, I can make out. I have heard their corner say, "Iska to muh band karne ka hai." So his opponent, when he enters the cage, is coming in with the mindset that I'm going to go in and shut this guy up. He's already angry. He's already, there is no rational thinking. It is about, oh, I'm going to knock him out. I'm going to shut his mouth. That's not a game plan. You come in with a game plan like that, you're going to get beat. You're going to get beat. So he's already won half the battle. So I think it's about characters, I personally don't encourage it in my team. But if somebody, it's their character, it's up to them. But if you don't back up what you talk, then it's a laughing stock. I can talk and I can say, oh, I'm going to call out this guy and I'm going to call out that guy. And I go in the cage and I get knocked out in 10 seconds or I get submitted, by something which does not even look like a submission. Then I don't think I should be doing the trash talk. I mean, and this is what I've always believed. First, prove yourself before you call out somebody. You need to be worthy of calling out somebody. So regarding the whole business of MMA, Pushkar, I don't think that it's this reason why we are failing. It's that I have said this in countless number of times that I guess there are two aspects and somehow we've not had the right blend of it, which is the love of the sport and the business of the sport, right? It has to be blended to a point where there is an entire ecosystem around it. When I say an ecosystem, I mean that if you look at, one of the examples that I give, because I have been closely watching this championship, one championship since the time it started. Yeah, so it's not just the fighters, it's not just the coaches, it's an entire ecosystem. They have a team of marketing people, they have a team that directs videos, they have a team of people that are, just focused on social media. They have a team, so it's an entire support structure. It's not just what happens in the cage. It's not just about the money that comes in. It's also what we are doing with that money to build that ecosystem.
If you see the one championship, the way it built itself, it is even ideologically very different from the UFC, which is, I think, a major reason why it has succeeded. Whereas every other fight promotion that comes up is just mindlessly trying to ape the UFC. Do you think that's why, that's the problem right there?
So I think, see, again, what we need to, again, this is just going back to what I was talking to somebody a few days back is, see, we need to understand cultures, right? When you look at the Asian culture itself, we are more deep rooted in conventional martial arts like karate and kung fu, and I'm not getting into the effectiveness of it, but we are more deep rooted into those martial arts. I mean, as a kid growing up, it was senshi, henshi, renshi, I don't even know how many titles that are there. You walk in, you bow, you're bowing to every senior, so basically your warm up is done bowing to people. So it's a culture. I mean, I could never think about trash talking to a senior in my in my karate room, or I could not think of doing that in a judo class. Like, if I was lucky enough to get a throw on a senior, like, okay, they would shake my hands and say, oh, good job, and that's it. I would not be able to say, man, I got you, and next time I'm going to keep you flying. No shit, they would throw me out. So I think that is what one has done, and that is why one has been successful. One has kept to its Asian roots of culture and stuff like that, honor. And I know that they have made a conscious effort to stay away from trash talking and stuff like that, because understand, as Asians, we don't kind of identify with that really a lot. But if you look at the US and that side, yes, WWE, WWF was famous because of the characters. So I would not say that they're loud and brash, but that's the kind of people they are. They like people who would be in your face and would call you out and stuff like that. They see that as the manly thing to do, and that's why UFC has a different identity than a one championship. Nothing's wrong or right. I believe that UFC is successful, one championship is successful. It also goes back to the culture they are coming from, the culture they are trying to promote, and I think it's working beautifully for both of them.
At the end of the day, it's more like who's buying your tickets. So
yeah, again, see, even if you go back to Pride days, way back during the Pride days, there wasn't so much trash talk. I mean, there was, but it wasn't as much, as it is nowadays. Because and if you see the Japanese audience, if you watch the old Pride fights, the Japanese audience kind of, were very educated audience. They kind of enjoyed the ground fighting as well. So they, they just were more distinct to the fight than to the build up to the fight. So the question is that, okay, there are some promotions in India that are, kind of promoting this kind of culture that, oh, you call this guy out, you call that guy out. But do people really, identify with that?
Yeah.
Do people, I mean, honestly, I see that as a big joke. I've seen a couple of fighters who don't want to do it, but have to do it because they're told that, listen, if you don't do this, you're not going to sell tickets. We might not be able to get you fights. So they're forced to do it.
The fact is it even selling tickets? Is that kind of audience the kind that will pay for a ticket?
See, my point is, Pushkar, we cannot compare the Indian MMA scene to the scene in the US or the scene in, other countries. We are at a very nascent stage. Yeah. So, I mean, we should be comparing ourselves to maybe the pre-UFC era or the just UFC time. I'm sure their numbers were not very encouraging back then.
Yeah.
But I guess, the idea should be, instead of mimicking somebody, if we can stay true to what we are, put up quality fights, promote quality fights, promote fighters the way they are. Don't make everyone a character. Everyone does not need to be a character. Some people are not, and let them be. Let them be the way they are. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who will identify with these people and still want to see these people fight. So I think, that's where the answer lies. Whether it's good or bad, again, numbers talk. Numbers talk.
coming to the topic of women in MMA, all right, there are obviously lots of legs to this topic in mixed martial arts. But do you think that because of the weight class categories, right, bustier women never actually have a real genuine shot in competitive MMA?
I don't think so. I think that's just so wrong, man. That's just so wrong. I don't think so, because I mean, the beauty, understand one thing, and the one reason why I like the sport that I'm in is that nobody gives a damn how you look. When that cage door closes, you could have a six pack and get your ass whooped, or you could have a nice looking cake body and be the best fighter in the world. I mean, look at Fedor. Who would look at Fedor and say that this guy was once at the top of the heap? But he was. Look at Roy Nelson. And that's what I like about our sport. It does not care how I look. It's about skills, it's about talents, it's about performance. And I think that, categorizing that this person would not do well or that person would not do well, I don't think works in this sport.
What I'm saying is, when it comes to weight categories, all right, in women, you are directly at an advantage if you're fat, because you're not carrying that excess 10% of body fat, which would create a huge power disparity between you and your opponent, right?
No, you're not.
Nobody in the top echelons of women's MMA is anybody who is.
Okay, so if we are going to talk about flat and things like that, my point is, if you're so-called flat, you'll be fighting somebody also who's so-called flat, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm
So
saying.
it's not like you have
But
any
if you're
advantage
busty,
there. You're fighting somebody else who's busty. So where's the advantage there?
No, that doesn't happen, because then you're only counted by weight category. You're
Exactly.
not counted by amount of muscle mass category as compared to fat.
I agree, but my question to you is, if you're talking about a woman being flat, obviously she's going to come into a lower weight category than a female who's busty, who might be at a higher weight category, right? So again, the point is, you are going to fight somebody at your weight category, right? And now, you cut weight, you don't cut weight, that's an argument which is separate, right? So I don't think there's an advantage or a disadvantage. I mean, one of the heaviest women that I have met personally, and believe me, I don't get intimidated by big people. Believe me, Sushovan, my training partner, will tell you, I got intimidated, I got blown by this female, was Gabby Garcia, right? I mean, but if today I'm going to say that Gabby Garcia is going to fight Akshata Khartare from my team, who's 48 kgs, Gabby Garcia was at that point about 98 kgs, yes, she has an advantage. But Gabby Garcia is never going to fight Akshata, right? Gabby Garcia is going to fight somebody who's 98 kgs or maybe more.
So that is what I'm saying. So because of the fat disparity, at the end of the day, breast is a fatty tissue, not a muscle tissue.
Right.
Right? So you can have a person who's 50 kgs muscle with 15% body fat, and you can have a person who's 50 kgs who is.
So let me ask you a question. I understand where you're coming from, Pushkar. What I'm trying to understand is, how is that different in a male weight category? Are you trying to tell me that in a male weight category, that if there is a guy,
The fat disparity is not that high. The fat disparity is not that high.
I beg to differ. I can show you a 57 kg guy, two 57 kg guys in my own gym, and believe me, the muscle mass difference is so much. Sushovan Ghosh versus a Manthan Rane. Now, who's at an advantage and who's not at an advantage?
Both of them are coming at what fat percentage? Both of them are lean.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
The height difference there.
no, it's not just the height difference. Their body type is different. Manthan is an ectomorph. Sushovan is a mesomorph. Right? Sushovan's muscle bellies are more full. His muscle insertions are shorter. That's why his muscle bellies are bigger. Manthan has a longer muscle insertion, and that's why he's leaner. Who's got the advantage?
See, that will create a disparity of like 5% or so. But in women,
Exactly, that's your answer. I don't think so, Pushkar. Believe me, how much percentage weight? Okay, you've seen Akshata. Okay, and you've seen other female members of my team. How much do you think is the body fat percent different there?
Not much.
And most of them, that they are not even of the same weight category. So it's not much. So I don't believe that, again, and I'm being dishonest, I think that's the beauty of weight categories. And you need to understand, it is applicable for me also. If I'm carrying a higher body fat percent and I land up in a weight category where I'm fighting a guy with a higher muscle mass, it is my job to get disciplined and drop my weight to a weight category where I am fighting people who are closer to my body fat percent. But then again, if my skills are good enough to carry me here, maybe I just won't. I mean, I'm happy being in any weight category. So I think.
So this was also a major controversy in the UFC, where eventually one fighter quit because she was busty and there's just no way she could cut it at her level, because no matter what she does and how much weight she cuts, she'll anyways carry 10% more body fat than her opponents.
Improve
Which
your.
was in a way obviously unfair to her.
Yeah, I mean, see, understand that you are never going to be able to change that. What can you do to compensate that? Is improve your skill level, right? If I have two options. That's why I waited till I dropped to an 87 kg to take my first fight, because I knew that at 140 kgs carrying the body fat I was, I'm probably going to gas out. I'm probably going to have a guy who's pretty much roided up and about 120 kgs, having more muscle mass than me, going at me. So the sensible thing for me to do was keep working on my skill level and keep dropping my weight to a point where I felt that, okay, my strength level, my skills are going to help me at this weight category. I mean, I still feel my next fight I would like to do at a weight category lower and go at 284 instead of the 93 weight category that I fought in. But that's a personal thing. I mean, if I say that I'm going to quit because I can't lose body fat, so I can't improve my skill level, that's my choice.
Up to a level where your skill levels eventually match up and there's not much difference between your skill levels, then every pound of your body weight in muscle or fat starts making a difference to your performance. Like, I know that 2 to 3% of body fat percentage can make tons of difference in your performance. If you are extremely cutting the weight too hard and you're dehydrated as hell, your performance is going to suffer. And a person who is busty is always going to have to do a way more severe weight cut than a person who is not busty, and that is going to take away from their performance.
But then, do I feel that my skill levels are good enough? Do I feel that I am at the right weight category? That's a personal choice. I think that's a personal choice. Generalizing is very difficult. Saying that, okay, because you're busty, you cannot or you don't have an advantage in MMA, I don't think that makes sense to me. Not with my experience.
Another thing we wanted to discuss was about women pursuing a career in MMA. Then how viable is it for a woman to pursue a career as a sport or as a full-time job in the field of mixed martial arts, especially in India?
So to be very honest, I think it's as viable as a male doing MMA right now. I mean, if you look at the women in India that are, made a mark in promotions like One, in promotions like Invicta. I just actually yesterday I did a Fighting Facts video where one of the female athletes actually asked me about what do I think is the future of Indian MMA and women's MMA, and I think it's very bright. I mean, that time of, Dana White saying, oh, there'll never be a girl in the UFC is gone. I mean, he stood corrected, and I think, we are, the way I look at it, currently in India, it's also an advantage because, again, the sheer amount of guys doing MMA versus the women doing MMA are lesser.
Yeah.
So the competition is lesser.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying the quality differs. But if you go to a tournament, like a national tournament, you go to a weight category, like a featherweight category, which is packed for guys. In India, it's normally the 48 and the 52 and 56 category, which is packed for women. You'll still see fewer number of competitors than you would see in the crowded weight categories for men. So I think, and it's also, who would not? I mean, if I have also seen this, that even as a career, like for example, as a trainer, personal training, if a woman realizes that, okay, I can train with a woman fighter, I can do kickboxing or BJJ with a woman fighter, they are more comfortable than doing it with a guy. So I think, it's as viable as it is for any guys, or maybe even slightly more viable, because, it's a niche. So when you see a girl who's fighting, we all sit up and take attention because they are breaking, they're breaking out and doing this. Yeah.
if you look at the statistics, actually, two of the top 10 most paid athletes in the world today are in women are from MMA. So MMA is by far only second to tennis in terms of the amount of money its athletes makes in women. So for women, it's a highly lucrative sports career, and the same goes for promoting female fights, because people suddenly sit up and take notice that holy fuck, that's a woman fighting. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's, it's all good to look at that, but then, you also need to look at the journey it has taken them to get there. You cannot compare India now with US at the moment and say, oh, because they get paid that much there, I need to get paid this much here. You need to compare yourself 20 years back. Yeah.
Develop in the same line.
Yeah, I mean, see, the growth has to be organic. It has to be organic. And this is what I've been saying, that it's not the amount of money that we pump in that is going to just start giving out fighters. See, quality fighters take time to prepare. The money has to go behind spending on a fighter's nutrition, a fighter's training, and not just paying them and saying, oh, here's your money, here's your money. It's not, that doesn't guarantee. Just giving big purses doesn't guarantee good fights. Developing good fighters guarantee good fights. So I think even if the money is there, it needs to be spent in the right manner. Just putting up big shows, just putting up big shows and putting up lights and putting up huge TV screens does not improve the quality of the fight. The quality of the fight is on the two fighters. The quality of the fight is on the two fighters that are fighting. So we need to spend on the fighters and not on the accessories associated with it, which is good. I mean, ultimately, we would all like to see big shows and, but come on, let's be really honest. Today, if you were to hear two UFC fighters, fighting on a mat, do you think people aren't going to watch it because the cameras are not there or the lights are not there or walkout music is not there? I'll watch it, man. I'm sure there are many people who'll watch it.
Yeah, I'll still watch it.
And you can take two fighters off the street and put them in a UFC cage and you think they'll sell gate? They're not going to. So ultimately, you have to build the quality. And I think that takes time. That takes time. I mean, a good training camp can progress the fighter. Where a fighter would take 1 year, it might take him 6 months or 8 months to get there. But not in a month. So just because I pay his 1 year fees together, I can't expect him to be that level in a month, right? He has to go through the grind. He has to do that. So I think it's always an organic growth and we are going to get there.
Another question that I meant to ask was, because, and this is especially because I know a lot of people who use MMA for this purpose, right? How does MMA help maintaining your state of mind or keeping your mind healthy and sane?
Oh, you get to vent out a lot. No, so, see, one thing is that obviously there's a lot of science behind when you train, serotonin and adrenaline and da. But I think one thing that is always there is when you're more aware, when you're more aware of yourself, of your emotions, it definitely helps. Because like I said, see, I could be having a bad day, but if I carry that onto my mat, not my training partners are not going to let me vent out on them because I'm having a bad day, right? So I have to keep my emotions in check. Otherwise, it will be put in check for me. The reality check will happen that fast. So, that is the best part about this sport, the humbling experience. I could be feeling angry, I could be feeling pissed at the whole world, and I could go there, and that first shot will tell me, okay, calm down, it's not going to matter what I'm feeling here. Or I could be feeling, oh, I've had this problem at home, I have that problem at home. And this is what I say, this is what I keep telling everyone, that you have to be where your feet are. You have to learn to detach your emotions when you're on the mat. Because your sparring partners, your opponents don't care whether your life is tough or you're going through some mess. They are going to try and take your head off nonetheless. So if you are not sharp and you're not 100%, good luck, man.
Okay, so I guess I asked all the questions that I intended to ask that were on the list and that I had to ask. Uh, one final question, all right? So since I've seen you, I've met you, you have a lot of interesting scars from burns to stabs and everything. So what has been your street fighting experience in life and mixed martial arts or whatever? What has been your experience in fights on the streets?
Who's been telling you this? This is all lies. I have never fought in the street. Where are my glasses? Let me look intellectual. Wait. Okay. So, to all the kids watching this, please don't fight on the road. We know we are not street fighters. We are trained athletes and professionals. Pushkar, I can't believe you did that to me. No, I mean, I'm the first one to admit that, yeah, I used to have anger issues. And yeah, so obviously all of us have been 20 and 21. Some of us are still are. And at that point, you feel like you're the king of the world. You're the most invincible person on the planet. But yeah, you learn quickly or not. And I think, like I said, martial arts has helped me, humbled me in a manner where, I've been made to realize that it's easy to pick on somebody or, to go out on a street and hit 10 people who've never fought. Because most people talk the talk, but when it comes to walk the walk, they can't. But when you are put against somebody who fights back, that whole equation changes. Somebody who refuses to back down, somebody who refuses to give up, the whole equation changes. And believe me, that is a very humbling experience. You realize that all the strength in the world, all the weight in the world does not matter. I mean, when I remember when I went for my first judo class, I was about 120 kgs. My coach was barely 75, 76. And I remember the first few months, I mean, I started believing I had wings because I was flying most of the time. I did not have my feet on the ground most of the class. And I used to hate it. I used to hate it because, obviously the big guy syndrome, I'm the big guy. I should be tossing people around. Hell, it didn't work. It just didn't work. I mean, there were times when I thought I was throwing him, and the next thing I knew was I would be in the air and actually, going through the motion like, oh, I can fly like this. So I've had my share of street fights and yeah, the scars to tell stories. But, in the hindsight, not very proud of it. It obviously, all your stories make for a good laugh. But if I had to change that, if I had to change that, I would definitely change that part because those anger issues didn't help much. Been through a lot of situations which I shouldn't have. Put my parents through a lot of situations which I shouldn't have at that point. And in the hindsight, not very proud of it.
But for a self-defense scenario, I think sparring really helps because for most people, the first time they're just hit, they're just going to shock, they blank out. Like especially people who have been raised in polite society and in protected homes, even if they're strong and are even athletically capable of doing great shit, even if they have done a lot of katas and stuff in karate, the minute they are hit, they are in shock, they can't do shit and then they get clobbered out. So I think sparring does really help, doesn't it?
So I think it has more to do with the whole fight or flight syndrome. I think, and this is what I have always said, we have to train our bodies to fight. Flight is more of a natural response. And, I've always said this, that it's not the act of violence, but the brutality that puts people off. So, when I give self-defense seminars, I've heard women say, oh, I've been doing kickboxing classes under this and I've been doing, I do Muay Thai under this and that. And you walk up to them and you grab their hair and their first response is, ah.
Choke.
Yeah. Because,
Exactly.
Because you've never been under attack. You've never been under pressure. And that's where I say that, always take up a martial arts which has some element of sparring because it conditions your mind to fight. And one of the first ways, the flinch response, I mean, even now, if you don't spar for some time, the first punch that you see coming, you're going to close your eyes and cover up.
Yeah.
That's the flight mode. The fight mode is that you're staying calm, you're in control and you're saying, okay, if this is the punch, I'm either going to move away, I'm going to parry it, I'm going to do something. That's the fight mode. But that's something that comes with constant training, constant sparring, you know. And that's why I always say, take up a sport which has some amount of sparring. You know, also because, I mean, it's like an examination. I could have learned 10,000 techniques, but till I can't apply it in a practical situation, what's the point of learning them? I mean, they look good to make videos, but if you haven't sparred, you haven't sparred. It doesn't matter.
So, sir, I think that will be all for today. Thank you so much for joining me on this chat, and it was beautiful having you. For all the people who have been listening to this, please do go follow @Jitendra Vicky Khare and @Team Relentless on Instagram. These guys put out a lot of genuine MMA info and a lot of tips and tricks out there which are absolutely legitimate, which is a very rare thing on Instagram, and I absolutely love and respect them for that. And make sure you're obviously following @Project Battlefit, which is us, and do come by to the website at www.projectbattlefit.com for a lot more amazing interviews and information on the Battlefit life. Alright, thank you so much. Thank you, sir, for joining us, and I shall see you all again.
Thank you, Pushkar. Thank you for having me. Yeah. See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Yeah.
We are just about building up this channel on YouTube now. Alright, so if you have come here from Instagram, Facebook, or my emailers, or because you happen to Google us, please make sure you follow us, you subscribe to us, and you like this video so that we can keep creating such great content for free for all of you guys. Alright, there's a lot of trash out there, and we do not intend to be a part of the trash. We only want to create pure, genuine content that actually adds value and intelligence and information to your life. So make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and share. This is Pushkraj Shirke for Project Battlefit, signing out.